Welcome back to the Late Bloomer Author Podcast. Now, the title for today's show is Building a Business That Gives You Meaning and Both Financial and Time Freedom. My guest today, he's been an accountant for over 50 years, but the most interesting part of his story began in his 60s. He deliberately made his practice smaller, leaner, and more intentional. He sacked some clients, he gave others away, and he rebuilt it around what actually mattered. And then he wrote 4 books, all after the age of 60. So what I'd like you to do now is do a warm welcome to my guest today. Hello, Noel.
Hello, Wendy, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
You're more than welcome. So today's going to be a little bit of all about reinventing yourself. The main idea of the Late Bloomer is to let people see that life doesn't end when you become retired or when you get older. There's so many things you can do out there, and with all the knowledge and all the skills that you've got, that you've acquired over the years, it's just the beginning. It's the next chapter, and it's the most exciting chapter as well, I think. So you've been in the accountancy world for 50 years, and you've had a partnership there. But after 50, you made the decision to change direction completely. So you made a really bold move, I must say, because people wouldn't do this. You deliberately made your business smaller, and people don't normally do that. They don't, bigger, get bigger, expand, get bigger, take on more staff, do this and do that. But you did totally the opposite. Explain that to me.
Well, you're right. I spent the majority of my career as an accountant, I suppose, producing accounts to comply with the financial reporting standards, to file at Companies House, and filing tax returns with HMRC. And as I got older, I started to realize that actually those accounts didn't really help the clients that I was working for, the ones who were awake at night or not drawing enough out of their business to fund their lifestyle. And it just seemed to me that all the information that was contained within a business's accounts, all the data that they had, could be put to better use. And so I started looking at the information behind the numbers in those accounts to see how they could help a business and help a business owner rather than just meeting their statutory obligations. And of course, the vast amount of data that we capture in accounting systems, and of course it's really just been the last, I don't know, probably 15 years since we've had accounting packages like Xero and QuickBooks and Free Agent. That means that we can mine a huge amount of data. So I decided that amongst my clients there were some who would value having that closer relationship with their numbers, others who really weren't too bothered. And so I set about sort of sorting them into those 2 categories. So those who weren't really interested in joining me on that journey to explore their numbers in more detail, I handed a number over to a friend of mine who had a sort of traditional compliance practice. Others I just disengaged with, to use our technical term. I was left with a nice number of clients, but ones who seriously wanted to grow their businesses. To start with, it didn't have a name. I was just sort of learning as we went along, but I created what I now call our business alignment method. Basically, and this was really the key to it, started with the 2 questions that I found as an accountant I'd never been asking before. The first one was, why are you in business? What's the reason?
Yeah.
And the second was, what's your relationship with the numbers, and do you really know the numbers that are driving your business? And so the 5-stage process that became the business alignment method starts with stage 1 is what I call context, which is to answer those questions, or at least to answer the first question: why are you in business, and what is your business for? And of course, I discovered that for a lot of people, they are in business, particularly if they are in, theirs is an owner-managed business, and all my clients are owner-managers. The business was to fund their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that differed hugely. You get some people who do want to grow and have a big business and employ people. Others, and I found quite a lot, didn't. They wanted to stay not necessarily small, but they wanted to have sufficient time, freedom, and as you said before, but they wanted financial freedom to enjoy that time. So it meant having a business that was profitable without them having to work ridiculously
Harder.
long hours and have the stress that can go with running a business. So that was really where the business that I run now evolved. It was out of I think what I saw, where I saw the accountancy profession perhaps failing clients who wanted to have the information that they could use to improve their business performance. And so now we work very closely with a relatively small number, and they're all on cloud accounting software. They all have monthly accounts, so their accounts are always up to date. Each month we then produce a detailed management report for them, but not just management report, detailed KPIs for the numbers that matter to them, and we produce a commentary on those numbers, and then we sit down with them either face to face or through Zoom, which is the video conferencing, and we have a detailed discussion about how they're performing and where they can improve, and that's proved to be very successful. I'm glad to say, and so the majority of my clients, if not all of them, now have successful businesses, but they're not stopping there; they're growing. But those who want to remain, perhaps you'd call it small, I call it just a one person practice, then, or one person business, means that they can do that. And of course the advances in technology, and particularly artificial intelligence, means that it's now far easier for one person with a laptop to run quite a sophisticated business.
Absolutely. I find what's fascinating, and I did say to you on the call that that when I think on your last newsletter you mentioned your book that we'll talk about a little bit later. There was you quoted a young man, Pascal, I think his name was, that had sort of started something and then realised that he could build this one-man business, if you like, without all the stress and everything, because it was, and I'm just found it quite strange that a young man of 20-something and then a late bloomer like ourselves basically came to the same conclusion, that this can be done. And so even though, you were in your 60s when you come to this conclusion, it just shows that it's there and it fits every model, and it's available for anybody who wants to go down that route. So tell me a little bit more about that model of the sort of on your own solopreneur, or whatever you want to call it.
What I call the one person practice, as I say, follows really that methodology that I like to say I devised, but more sort of evolved out of what I was doing for clients. And as I said a moment ago, the starting point is to really be clear on what it is, and to help my clients be very clear on what it is that they want from their personal and business life. So we have a 12-question questionnaire that everybody completes. That's what I call, which produces their personal and business intent statement. So it's why you're in business. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you must do, that the business must provide for you? And those 12 questions enable me, and sometimes enable the clients I took on a new client recently, a very successful consultant, who said to me when she completed it that she found it quite thought-provoking, because she hadn't actually asked herself some of those.
I was just going to ask you that question. Yeah, did you find that some of your clients were like, I never even thought of that. I have no idea. What I started business because I wanted a nice, I didn't want to work 9 till 5, or, I wanted a certain lifestyle stuff, but they've never actually gone deeper and asked those sort of questions. And so, I was going to ask you, did some of your clients find it quite thought-provoking, as you said?
They do, and sometimes they say, I didn't expect my accountant to be asking me those questions. And so, but it means that what we then say is that personal business intent statement is then the anchor. Every decision that they take about their business, or we help them take about their business, is driven by their numbers. So we've got evidence, but it's then measured against their intent statement. And so, does it move them closer to what they want or not? And so there's a very clear, well, if it moves them closer, let's do it. If it doesn't, let's not do it. And so there's a very clear path then that we can and they can follow. So that's the stage that comes out of having the numbers. So
Yes.
so stage 3 is knowing what they can do with the business, and that might be simple things like growing sales. Quite often it's making sure or growing their gross margins. I always say to business owners that a 1% increase in your gross margin drops straight down to the bottom line without you doing any more work. We very often talk about pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Most business owners, particularly those who are used to selling services rather than goods, selling services, selling their time, in my experience, probably don't charge enough for their services. And so we quite often have a healthy discussion about pricing. And then that process then becomes ongoing. So each month we have that meeting. I call it the virtual board meeting, where we go through obviously their monthly report, but we also go through how are we progressing towards achieving their objectives, what other things strategically should they be doing, what other marketing strategies are there that they can use, how up to date their business model is, because of course one of the things that we've seen over the last few years is some businesses pivoting their business model quite substantially, particularly in terms of their distribution channels, how they're getting information to their clients and customers. And again, I think that goes back to how they use technology and how they use artificial intelligence, which we try and build into making sure that all our clients have or at least have awareness of latest technology and how artificial intelligence can help them.
Yeah, and what's available.
That's why we can only have relatively few clients, because
Yes.
what we do with them, which we do with each client, is fairly intense. Perhaps certainly not what I did as a traditional accountant when I was learning my skills, and then for a number of years when I was a partner at Deloitte. But certainly since I set up my own practice, it's much more fulfilling, and that is something that I believe is very important.
Yeah, do you find that some of your clients, or maybe not your clients because you've sort of handpicked, if you like, but there's a little bit of a pushback on AI? Because I find this when I'm talking about having AI to help you to write your book, and straight away you get people, oh, if you're writing a book with AI, it's not yours, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I didn't say write your book with AI. You use the AI to do all the grunt work, all the research, the heavy lifting, the things that you don't want to be spending time on. But you do get some pushback and people saying, oh, I'm not going to use AI, it's cheating or whatever. Like, ooh.
Well, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about AI. First of all, a lot of people still using the latest tools just as they did when ChatGPT first came out, just to ask it questions, or still using the models as a sort of sophisticated version of Google.
Yes.
And of course, the AI that we've got today, although it's rapidly improved, it's only 3 or 4 years ago that we had access to it. But the AI that we've got today is significantly different from AI as it was just a few years ago. And I think there are two things. One is that I used AI to help me write the book that I've just written.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the distinction that I draw is between AI generated and AI assisted. I
Yes.
wouldn't use AI to generate a book, and I don't think anybody should,
No.
because all it's going to do is capture information that already exists and regurgitate it in a form
Exactly.
that probably exists somewhere else already. The ideas in a book have got to be your ideas. But as you rightly said there, AI can help you hugely with your research. And so my latest book started with obviously me inputting all of my intellectual property that I've accumulated over a number of years, but then getting AI to research and in some cases find me third-party evidence to support it and things like that. The other area that of course AI is, and this is what I call AI assisted, is then when you've got a manuscript, AI is excellent at becoming your editor. And they can do proofreading, they can do copy editing, they can identify duplications, and the end product is a much superior product than when you finish your manuscript. And so using AI selectively, I believe, is a real benefit. I mean, interestingly, of course, we've just heard that Anthropic, and I'm sure it'll happen with the others as well, that they're going to watermark
Yes.
AI.
I saw that on an article on LinkedIn, and shared it. I'm thinking, oh,
So anything AI generated is going to be watermarked. So if you were just to incorporate it as it is, as AI generated into a manuscript, then it would be there for everybody to see. But of course, that's where I think, and that's where all that's happening, and I think that's a good thing, all that's happening is that people are being made aware that if it's written by AI, then it's not really your content.
no.
So, I mean, I don't particularly want to read a book that's just other people's content, as I say, regurgitated. I want to read a book where the author's actually presenting their own information.
Exactly. It's funny you should say that, because Chris and I, when we first started writing, we were on a platform that you download other people's books and you read them and you can put a review on Amazon. And people do that for you as well. And the amount of books that we used to get, and they were so obviously AI that you had no choice but to give them a 1 or a 2 or something like that, because they hadn't even made any effort at all to make it their own. There was no personalization, there was no voice of the author, there was nothing. People, obviously they're thinking, oh yeah, I can write a book. I've even seen, on Facebook and things like that, people coming up saying, oh, I've got this software and you can write a book in 3 hours. And I'm like, no, stop it. People don't want to read that. People don't want to read something that's AI generated.
No. And like you, one of the advantages I think of being perhaps a little bit older, as I am now, is that it is the experience that we've accumulated over a good number of years that actually makes what we've got to say, or hopefully makes what we've got to say, valuable.
More interesting. Yeah, I mean, as I say, I was talking to Fiona, she was author last week, and I asked her if she could have written the books that she's written now as a 20-year-old, and she's like, not at all, because all the people, all the characters in the book are part of her, and her experiences and stuff like that. And you can't do that, one, if you've got no life experience, because you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know, as they say. And that life experience, the skills that you've done, the things you've seen, the people you've met, everything all comes into fruition later in life, and that gives you then the skills to write a book. And that's one of the things I try and get across to people, is because when I wrote my very first book, I think that was one of my blocks, is who's going to want to read my book? There's hundreds of management books out there, who's going to want to read mine? I'm just another manager, whatever. And then it was my experiences and how I dealt with things, and when I started looking back and thinking, oh, I didn't realise that, or I'd forgotten I'd done that, and things like that. And those are the sort of things that you can't put in a book unless you've lived it, unless you've done it.
Absolutely. The first book I wrote for accountants, because I was called Practice, and I actually wrote it as a story. It was a story of a young qualified as accountant and wanted to start her own practice. and she found a mentor who obviously was older. And it's a story of how she built her practice with her mentor sharing his experience, because he was at the opposite end of his career.
Were you the mentor?
It lent on my experience, put it that way. But yeah, I created a persona of somebody better looking than me. So he was the mentor.
Okay. So I believe that you've written 4 books.
4 books, yeah.
But you didn't start writing until you were 60.
I wrote my first book in 2018, so I was actually 65.
Wow.
I'm giving away how old I am now, aren't I?
Oh, it's all right. I can't do mental arithmetic, so you'll be okay.
Yeah, I wrote my first book in 2018, and then that was called How to Build a Successful Business. I wrote various ebooks and things, but I didn't write another serious book until 2020, beginning of 2025, just over a year ago, when I wrote Practice. And I've
so
written 2 since.
What made you think at 60, 65 in your case, that was the moment to start writing a book? What sort of...
2
had
things,
you always
really.
wanted to?
Well, I suppose everybody says they'd always like to write a book, don't they? And I saw some statistics recently. I mean, the percentage of people who actually do is very small, tiny percentage. So, yes, it wasn't that I particularly thought, I want to have a book published. It was intrigued about the process, the book writing process.
Yes.
Because a lot of the information around, well, back then, obviously we didn't have AI or anything like that, was about how difficult it is to write a book, how long it takes, and all the, that it's complicated. So I decided I just wanted to learn the process. And so I did various research on the best way to start out and write a book. So it was as much as anything just to learn the process. And of course, having written 1 book, and found it quite difficult, I must admit, looking back, then the obvious thing to do seemed to be to write another one, although it did take me a few years, because knowing that once you know, or once you've got a process that works for you, then writing more books becomes very easy. What I found was, and I'm sure all authors are different, I don't know how you do it, but what I found was that the key to writing a book and finishing a book and finishing it, because I'm sure a lot of people have got unfinished books somewhere, the key to writing a book and finishing it and then self-publishing it is to start with a very clear idea of the message, and then an even clearer outline. And what I do, I produce an outline that breaks down what I want to say into chapters, and then within each chapter the 4 or 5 points that I want to get across. Once I've got that outline, it's then, so there may well be, say there's 20 chapters and there's 5 points in each chapter, so you've got 100 points. So you're not writing necessarily, I'm going to sit and write a chapter. You're sitting and writing one of those, and that then breaks it down into very manageable proportions. And that's the way that I construct it. And
a bit like how do you eat an elephant?
Absolutely, one mouthful at a time. And once you've got that manuscript, now, as I say, editing it becomes a lot easier using AI. And then, of course, Amazon have made it so easy now to, well, not just Amazon, but Ingram Spark and other publishers have made it so easy now to publish a book, both as Kindle and as a paperback. You don't need to have your book, you don't need to have copies printed. My first book, I got copies printed and shipped them off to Amazon in a box. Well, you don't need to do that these days. You just send them the PDF, and if anybody wants to buy one, or if you want copies, they just print on demand. So it's so easy now to become a published author once you've written and once you've got your book. Although it's interesting that you said about the books on Amazon that clearly are generated by AI. I know one of the things I noticed these days is that Amazon do actually say one of the things they ask you when you're uploading the book is, have you used AI?
Is it AI generated?
And as you said, it's so obvious. I'm surprised they don't reject more.
Yeah.
I really think they should.
The thing with
all-
Amazon is yes, they do ask if the images are AI generated or the text is AI generated, but they only keep that information. They don't, it's not a black point against you if it is.
No,
They just
right.
want to know if it is or if it isn't.
Yeah,
It doesn't make any difference to Amazon if it's AI generated or not. Maybe that will change.
Yeah,
But,
maybe. Yeah.
at the moment, it's just a question they ask because they want to know. But yeah, they don't actually do anything with that information. And yeah, I mean, we when we, well, say I was 60, what we did is Chris saw something on Facebook about write and publish a book in 7 days, and it was a challenge. And so he said, do you fancy doing this 7-day challenge, write and publish a book? And I'm like, yeah, why not? And we did. And do you know what? We enjoyed it. And we sat side by side on the sofa, a bit competitive. How many words have you written? What about you? And he did this fabulous cover that was all AI generated. And I'm there with Canva making it, not so pretty.
Right.
And it was fun, and we did it. Obviously, it was difficult, but what we found was we were in a big group of others that were doing the same. And day 6, we're looking at getting the cover done and putting it all together. And other people said, "Not quite sure what to do for me topic." And you're like, "Just get it done." And that's the thing I found is just start. Just get started.
Yeah.
So, what do you know now then about writing a book that you wish you'd known at the very beginning? Is it the sort of procedure or the outline?
Certainly creating that outline.
Yes.
That was the breakthrough for me. When I realized that there was no point, even with an idea, there was no point sitting down with a blank piece of paper or a blank screen.
Yeah.
That I needed to have a template, if you like. I needed to know what was going to go into the book, what was going to go in and what wasn't, what the message was going to be, and creating that outline was really the difference. Because once I got that, then I was able to, as I say, write those sections as I went along and fit them all together, make sense. I mean, sometimes I changed the order of things.
Yes.
But essentially, I had a plan. And it was following that.
So it's a bit like having a skeleton, isn't it? That you sort of start with the bare bones and then you build into each section, which is a good way. Yeah, it's a good way to do that. I mean, my school community, if you like, is all about getting people who to actually just start, and it's got some free training in there. I've got what I call the Bloom system, and that is, like you've said, it's just getting started, getting your first 500 words down, maybe your introduction, maybe your outline, doing a structure, and just making a start. Because if you look at the whole thing, there's no way, and I think that's why a lot of people don't write their book, is because they're looking at the whole thing and thinking, I'm never going to do that, instead of breaking it down into bite-sized pieces.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that books don't need to be, it's not like you're writing a 300-400 page novel. Again, my experience is that the sort of book that I write, my books are typically anywhere between 100, 150 pages. And that's quite long enough. I think people, if you can't get your message across in that relatively short.
Yes.
So my books, and I think most books of the type we're talking about, aren't going to be long. Hopefully not boring. They're going to be relatively short. Obviously contain detailed information, but relatively short, a book that can be read perhaps in a weekend or something like that. And so there's no need to aspire to write 200, 300, 400 pages, because that's not what people not what people consuming our content are going to run. You mentioned the introduction there. Now that reminded me of one thing. I usually write the introduction first, and then write the book, and then go back and completely rewrite the introduction.
Yes. Yeah.
I've actually started thinking that I'm not going to bother writing it first. I'm just going to write the book and then write the introduction, because the introduction
changes
reads
so much
better
yes.
once you've written the content.
Exactly. Yeah, it does. So how do you think writing books has changed the way that clients either towards you, or how clients find you, or if it builds trust with clients?
As an accountant, the vast majority of my clients that I've got now, have come to me through referral. Obviously,
Okay.
you've got to have some clients to start with, but they've come through referral from people I know well. They've come from, I've had a couple come from my membership when I was a member of the Entrepreneurs Circle, people that I knew there. But if I look now at my list of clients, it's very rare that a client has come to me cold. I do have one very successful business, it's a couple, husband and wife, who actually did find me because they're local, and I think talked to 4 or 5 accountants and appointed me. But that's rare, that's unusual, because taking on an accountant, particularly the sort of somebody who's going to do what I do, you've got to be prepared to, what I say in my book is, you've got to be prepared to, I call it the mirror conversation. You've got to be prepared to hold the mirror up and see the business as it is, and not take it personally when somebody tells you that you're probably doing things you shouldn't be,
Doing it all wrong.
You might have a customer who's costing you money. You might have a cash conversion cycle that's too long, and you've got to cut your supply chain. Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You've got to be prepared to distance the personal and the business. If I'm sitting with a client and making recommendations, even if they're ones that they find it hard to accept, you've got to recognize that recommendation has come from evidence within their numbers.
A place of love, we call it.
Place of love.
A place of love.
But you see, not everybody can do that. Not everybody can accept the fact that you're. But if they want to improve the business, and if they want to achieve what, again, go back to the intent statement, and that's where I always anchor it. I say, well, look, if you want to achieve this, then you've got to be prepared to do that, even though it might, to start with, be unpalatable. I give the example in the book of a young lady who runs a fashion design business, who is selling wholesale to a friend of hers and losing money. And so when we had the conversation that she had to ditch that customer, that really just to give the example that if you're going to go down this route and do it honestly and authentically, you can't just tell business owners what they want to hear.
No.
You've got to tell them what the evidence is saying. And that, for a lot of accountants, is not something they do. They produce the accounts and they give the accounts and the tax computation and send their invoice and say, see you next year.
Yeah.
And that's fine. If that's the business model that they want, then good on them. It's not the business model that I decided to develop to actually help businesses become more successful.
Yeah, exactly. So have your clients all read your book, have they, do you think? Or
well, the one we're talking about now, no, because it's actually, when publishing it.
This is your new book.
This is the new book. Is published on the 1st of September.
Okay.
We've talked about a couple of my others. The other book that I wrote actually last year is called Numbers Don't Lie, and this is a book for business owners who, again, taking the point of view that everything is in their numbers is evidence as to what they can use to take decisions. So, and the numbers don't lie. So whatever the numbers say must be true. I finished that book just before Christmas last year, and then of course we had the early part of this year. We had the real revolution in AI as to what AI can do. So because I was already planning the book I've just finished, I put Numbers Don't Lie on the back burner, and as soon as this one is published in September, I'm going to go back to Numbers Don't Lie, because Numbers Don't Lie is going to get a rewrite.
Now with all the AI
with
stuff.
all the things that AI can do to help business owners extract that information from their accounting software, because that's the other big thing that AI has done, as you know, is that one of the things that, historically it's all very well having the data, but actually extracting that data and then being able to interpret it.
Yep, know what to do with it.
And knowing what to do with it is the important thing. And of course, one of the things that if you extract all the data, you're just going to be inundated with too much data. So actually identifying which is the data that really matters to your business. One of the 12 questions I mentioned before that I ask on the business intent statement is, if you were stranded on a desert island and could just get 2 or 3 pieces of information about your business every day, what would they be? What are the key things that you absolutely need to know to keep your business on track? And so AI is going to be is already being a huge benefit to extracting information from the accounting software. Well, Zero Accounting is in a partnership with Anthropic and use Claude in their software, so they've already got AI built into the software. So that book, even before it was published, needs almost a second edition to become the first edition. So
that's how fast things change.
Well, it is, and that's very, it is interesting. That's why I think anybody writing a book today, obviously there are some subjects that have got longevity, but anybody writing a book today, particularly if it touches on technology, is going to have to recognize that they're going to have to update it within a relatively short period of time. And that's fun too. But I must admit, going back and rewriting or doing a second edition probably isn't as much fun as writing a new book.
So tell me about this new one then. What's it called? And it's out in September, you said.
It's called the One Person Advisory Practice.
Okay.
So it's written specifically for accountants, business advisors, coaches, consultants, anybody who provides business advice to owner-managed businesses. But a lot of the concepts in it really are applicable to any business. It takes the business alignment method that I talked about earlier, and it goes through how I came up with that method, why it's important for accountants or business advisors who want to help business owners move the needle and improve their businesses. And by improve them doesn't necessarily mean make them bigger or scale or employ lots of people. It means make them so that they achieve whatever their objectives are, which
more streamlined.
For some people is to have a business that just meets and funds their requirements. We then go through the 5 stages. I then talk about how to implement them. For example, one of the things that every business has, as I mentioned before, is the monthly meeting. But it's not just turning up with a set of accounts. It's making sure that the accounts and the business dashboard, as we call it, which has got their KPIs on it, and the commentary that we've written identifying the key factors in that month's accounts and the things that they should be aware of, that they get all those probably 3 or 4 days before the meeting, so that we're not spending the meeting just going through the information. They've been through the information. We're talking about what the information is telling them. They'll then probably tell me plans they've got. One of my clients I had a meeting with last Friday said, oh, really exciting news. They bought from a particular supplier, and they say that supplier's now appointed us as their UK distributor. So can you tell us about how to incorporate the recording all that information in our accounting software? And so, it's both ways. The client's coming forward with things that are happening that they want to embrace. So I explain in the book how to run those meetings, and then there's a series of appendices with documents like the personal and business intent statement. There's an example of that in there. There's each of those 5 stages I talked about has a particular report that it generates, and so it's got examples of those for people who want to actually implement the methodology, or to take, not to adopt my methodology, but want to create their own methodology and to give them a sort of template for how they can do that.
Do you find, I mean, I don't know if you sort of, have networking or anything with other accountants. So do you find any pushback from other accountants that are doing the more traditional, if you like, accounting, asking what the hell you're doing?
No.
No? Okay.
Because, to be honest with you, I tend not to. I mean, I've got accountants amongst my client, but who are clients who are advisory clients, who I call them, I mentor them. So I've got accountants who are my clients, who I work with, and other consultants and business advisors who want to learn some of my methodologies, but I let them come to me through stuff that I've published. I don't market that service particularly. So no, I don't have accountants particularly. Those there are one or two who've been interested, who have asked me, and I've shared the methodology with them. But to be honest with you, Wendy, I think most accountants are actually quite comfortable in their own space. They would find moving to what I do quite an uncomfortable space to be in.
Yes. I totally agree with that. Yeah, the more I speak to you and other people, I'm like, oh, my accountant needs to go. He's just not with because again, the way Chris and I do our business is very much how you're saying about your methodology. We don't want to get bigger. We don't want to take on any staff, and basically our work is all online. Chris he's a software architect. His brain just amazes me. The amount of information he's got in there, I'm in awe of the stuff. He's a very, very, very clever man. It's funny because I like him to I compare him to a mad professor, but instead of a workshop full of half-built gadgets, he's got a cloud or a server or whatever with half-built programs, softwares, apps, platforms, blah. And he's always building something. And he's just built this fabulous platform. It's called Clear. And basically it uses systems from like years and years back and put them all together. And basically any post or any article or any newsletter that you put out, it's all audited and measured against these particular things, about empathy and clarity and things like that. So we've decided to push that and market it because anybody who does content would need that. But his brain is just, he's going from, because he's a software architect, he's actually built himself in a box. So he wants to sell that so people, if they can't afford him on a daily, a monthly or a 6-month contract, they can pay monthly, and it's his brain in a box. It's full of documents and 37 years of experience as an architect. So for people who want to do that, fabulous, and we love that like you do. But there's a lot of people out there, they can't see past what they've always done. They can't see the bigger picture. They can't see that things are changing. And if you don't jump on the AI bandwagon, if you like, you get left behind because it's here. You can't stop it. It's happening. So.
Yeah, and I think it is. I agree with you, but I think it is just a trend. I mean, once upon a time we didn't have the internet, and a lot of people thought, oh, that's just a passing fad, and AI is the same. Is that we've got to embrace technology and advances in technology, good and bad.
Yes.
And the important thing is that, I think for businesses like ours, we use it in a sensible way and in perhaps a cautious way, but we use it to benefit our customers and clients. That's what I'm trying to do. I hope we have a little bit of success doing it.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is fear. They don't. It's a bit scary because it does so much. It's so clever, and a lot of people can't tell what's AI and what's not AI, which comes back to the what you said about the trademark and things. So yeah, I think some people are a little bit cautious, and a lot of people are scared of change. One of the books I remember reading got a gazillion years ago is Who Moved My Cheese. I don't know if you've read that book. Fabulous book. Fabulous book. Everyone in the planet should read that book.
That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. So, what I'm going to ask you now is, so if my audience is 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, and I'm trying to encourage them to write a book. So, if anyone's listening now and they've got a book idea or a business idea, what would you say to them?
Well, the first thing to do is to make sure that your idea is, well, if not unique, is different. How you differentiate yourself in the market. I've got a client, a lady who's a coach to professional women, and she's got her own way of coaching, but she's actually creating that at the moment as her own signature method, her methodology, and the important thing is that for her, and I think for anybody starting a business or wanting to document their knowledge in a book, is to make sure that what they're doing is differentiated in the market, so that it's them, it's theirs, it's something that potential customers can't get anywhere else. Because if you're going to, we know starting a business is hard, and so what you need to do is to ensure that you've got something that is different, that you can create something, or you can develop something, or you can help people build something that they can't get elsewhere. And then just to make sure you've researched it, make sure you've researched the competition, make sure you've researched the market, make sure that there is a market for it, make sure you're very clear on who your ideal client is, and what that ideal client or customer, and what that ideal client or customer will pay for the service, to make sure that it's financially viable as well. So there's quite a lot that goes into starting a business. I've helped a number of people start businesses, and those are all the things that we and then, as I said earlier, making sure that what technology is available and what the technology is available can do to help support the business. I mean, you mentioned that one of your distribution channels, maybe your main distribution channel, is online, so that's looking at the business model. Online wasn't available for a lot of businesses only probably 10, 15 years ago, and it now is. And so there's an awful lot of businesses who can deliver their service or their product online, and so making sure that you're taking advantage of all that technology. I make it sound as though it's quite difficult starting a business, but then it probably is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think from what you've just said, yes, all those points are very valid, and absolutely, you need to know your client and your business, your competition, and everything. But I think is don't be overwhelmed by it all, don't be put off by it all, and if you've got if you've got an idea, don't think that someone else is not, like I did with my book. There's loads of management books out there, because you are unique. Whatever you're bringing to either a service or to a manufactured product or something is being looking at it from you being one of a kind, I think, and going for it. Not to be worried or think I don't know. A lot of people I've spoken to want to write their book. They actually don't think what they've got to say is worthy, if you like, and I'm like, but you've got all that years of experience.
Yes. I've never had that experience. Perhaps I'm not humble enough.
I think for me, again, it's I'm coming more from a point of view of writing a book as opposed to starting a business, so it's not quite as intense as that. But I think at a later stage, as a late bloomer, that then I don't think people should be put off by the fact that they're 50 or they're 60 or whatever age it is, and they're starting from fresh.
I think, as I said earlier, age is a real advantage when you're writing, because you've got a lifetime of experience. And again, I would say to anybody, I said before about how I start off with clients on my advisory process, and I think that the same thing to do if you're writing a book. Ask people, why are you in business? It's the same question. Why do you want to write a book?
Mm.
You're not going to make any money out of it. That's
No.
one thing. And I think some people, you might think, oh, I'll write a book and
And
it'll
be
become
rich.
a bestseller. I'm afraid
Yeah,
that's,
that
I'm
no,
afraid
that
that's
doesn't
not,
happen.
I'm afraid, spoiler alert, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well,
But,
yeah. What I normally say to people is, you start writing a book, you write it for yourself.
well, you write it
you
for
write
yourself,
it,
but you might
yeah,
also be writing it for your
family.
audience,
Yeah.
people who will benefit from that book.
Yes.
And that's where a book can lead into a business, because if you then take the content of the book, I mean, you mentioned to me, Wendy, that you've created a training course out of one of your, not sure whether it was a book first, but
It was going to be a book,
course
and then I
that,
shelved it. Yeah.
but a course that people can follow. So that's a business idea, and
Yes.
that's what. But yeah, you need to have, and perhaps that's something that we should have said earlier. That I think a lot of people think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to write a book? But it's just like anything in life. There's got to be a reason, and that reason's got to be something that is strong enough. There's enough motivation that you're going to see it through to the end. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. But I think the other thing you mentioned before, I think, yes, it is. There are lots of moving parts, both in writing a book and in starting a business. And if there's anybody listening who's thinking of starting a business, then they can always have a call with me. I don't charge people for contacting me, and who might have a business idea and want to talk it through and ask, does it look viable? And if it does, what should I do next? Always happy to have those calls with people. I do it quite a lot, and there's no charge for that.
Yeah, that's really brilliant. I was going to say when I've finished the recording, this episode's going out on Sunday. I think it's the 16th, and in the description, I'll make sure that your links to your socials are on there. Also, a link to your call. Because I'm sure, there'll be people who want to give you a call and perhaps have a chat and talk things through. So that's sort of really generous of you to offer that. And we look forward to your book coming out in September. Is it available as a pre-order on Amazon?
Not yet.
No. Okay.
It will be, and then I'll be putting a note out to my list probably in about a week's time when.
Okay.
When I know exactly. I've said the 1st of September, hopefully that'll be the date, but as you know, the final stages of actually getting a book, getting it, well, what we used to call typeset, obviously these days the layout and getting it uploaded to Amazon and all those things, there's a time scale involved.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, it'll be early September, and if anybody's interested, it's called the one person advisory practice.
Absolutely, we'll look forward to reading that, and I think it will help a lot of people, like ourselves who've got I call myself a solopreneur, and but yeah, and there's a lot of people out there with ideas and working alone and could do with the benefit of all the information that's in there. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you coming along on this very, very hot afternoon and spending some time with me having a chat.
Thank you, Wendy. I've enjoyed it, and I hope it's been of some use to your listeners.
Yeah, and I'll make sure all the links and everything are in the description. So what we'll do is we'll go from there, and hopefully we'll get people coming and having a look at you and reading your books.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I just want to say again, thank you for Noel for coming along, and thank you for listening today. And this episode will be out on Sunday the 16th, so make sure that you subscribe and make sure you join the school community as well that I mentioned. We've got some free training in there for if you do want to start your own book, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, and you'll be able to catch up with all the previous podcasts, etc., etc. We've got another great guest next week that I'm looking forward to. I won't tell you who it is yet, but I'm sure you'll find it fascinating. So again, thanks to Noel for joining me today. And remember, you're not too late. You're right on time. Bye-bye.